So, slideshow. Yeah, there we go. And I hear just a little bit of squeaking noise. I'm not sure which spot that's coming from. Okay, so from a ACP perspective, you've got these different methodologies. So Agile, the word Agile is referring to a family of methodologies. There is no such thing as, here's the Agile methodology. It's a family of methodologies, right? So what that means is a very rich environment. Some of these names are up here on this slide too. I like to refer to it as going into a grocery store. You take these names across the top, like Scrum, Kanban, Lean, Extreme Programming. It's like, hey, let me go down the Lean aisle, pick some things off the shelf. Oh, let me go down the XP aisle, the Extreme Programming aisle, pick some things off the shelf. Okay, each of these methodologies have their own specific focus and why they came into existence. So you got to know, okay, well, if I go down this aisle, what do I expect to find? Okay, so Scrum is all about project management, but done in an entirely different manner. So Scrum exists for the purpose of putting some project management structure around the activity of delivering whatever your output might be, your product, but delivering it quickly. Okay, whatever quickly means for your industry context, for software these days, it means every 2 weeks. That's the norm. It could be, it's fairly common to say 1 week. You're working in more electromechanical type systems or mechanical environments or construction, commercial construction, it's a different time frame because you're in a totally different setting. But Agile is being applied outside of the software realm, especially within the last, say, 8 to 10 years, as it's taken off so well in the software space. It's like, hey, where else can we use this? Okay, so Kanban is something from the manufacturing world. Okay, so Toyota came up with that as part of their major contribution into what Lean is. So Kanban and Lean are right next to each other there. Both of those originated from manufacturing back in probably around the 1940s, for the most part. Right, so Kanban is the idea of continuous delivery. All right, so all of us experience continuous delivery. How do we experience it on our smartphones?
Text messages.
Not that one. So that is a continuous type of interaction, but that's a different element, different media stream. So think about it though. Where do we see continuous delivery?
News.
Advertising.
Now, see, and everybody's talking about here's what I experienced, right? Because we don't even see the continuous delivery happening. We're not that aware of it. Okay, so that this is the idea of continuous delivery. It happens behind the scenes. So if you do pay attention, occasionally you get these little messages like 15 apps updated last night.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so this continuous delivery concept, I throw this question out intentionally because it helps magnify the nature of continuous delivery. It just kind of quietly happens behind the scenes. Nothing ever breaks, theoretically. on the front end, on your user experience end of things. Okay, so Google does that constantly with all of their products, Gmail and Drive, Google Drive, and Hangouts, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
All right, so Kanban is this idea of continuous delivery. There is no every 2 week increment. It's just put out the new one. Maybe occasionally it's every 2 weeks, but there's nothing required of the delivery for it to be an incremental, consistent every 2 weeks or every week or every 4 weeks. Okay, Lean is also from manufacturing. So there's a book from Lean. I'll have to bring it in, especially since Stephanie come from a manufacturing background. So you want to be able to take your background and map it into a new space. So this one book, it's a really thin one. I forget who the authors are right now. It begins with a K. The last name begins with a K. It's a husband-wife team that wrote the book. But it's fairly short book. I like short books more than thick books. But they mapped the manufacturing concepts of lean into the software space. So they did a really good job with it. So it's the only pristine book in lean for software. All right, if you take a look at extreme programming, so lean, by the way, I missed the punchline there. The whole point of the existence of lean is eliminating waste. That is its entire function in life, is to eliminate waste. Kanban is how you do continuous delivery. Scrum is this structure of doing project management. Extreme programming, that's actually what originated Agile back in the early 90s. Okay, so was it Kent? I can't remember the last guy's name. But he's the one that started that. Kent Beck started it, and extreme programming was oriented towards the technical work. How can developers be turning out much higher quality? It's like Pedro talked about quality for developers. Maybe if they say, and I don't know what agile technology or approach they're using in cellular there, but maybe if they blend extreme programming with Scrum, they'll wind up with something that's stronger. Okay. So extreme programming, if you want to put a term on here, its main characterization these days in this current decade is pairwise programming.
What is what? What is
It's
it?
called pairwise programming.
Pairwise. P-A-I-R.
Yeah, the word pair like a pair of shoes. So paired programming, pairwise programming, there's like 2 or 3 different ways of expressing it. But one person's at the keyboard, the other person's looking over the shoulder of the other person, thinking through, okay, the person's writing the code right now. Let's see, let me think about how it impacts design. Let me think about how it impacts other requirements. Let me think about what the person's doing. Do we already have that capability written in some library somewhere that we should be using instead of what's being written right now?
It's like a movie scene.
It is. It's happening live.
Patching it together as they go.
Yeah, and just to put some emphasis on this, because some people mentioned they're from the medical area, that, there was a point in time when I was looking for a full-time job, and I decided not to do that anymore. Like part-time. When you do your job interview, you need to immerse into whatever industry you're going to go into. So I wanted to look at medical devices. So for a month, I immersed into medical devices. With the company, there's a lot of companies, good companies in the area where you can go interview on it. It landed me some on-site job interviews. So it worked out good. But immersion means you got to learn their perspective. Their perspective is more important than my perspective. So Federal Code of Regulations 20, FCR 20, that is the holy grail, so to speak, of what the government, from regulatory perspective, requires of medical device makers. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it doesn't take that long to read through it either. It only took me a day or 2, but I went and read through the whole thing. Okay, and one of the things that they mention in that FCR 20 is a list of what your inspection technique is. And what is your inspection technique? Describe it or label it. If it already exists, then just give it a label. They include this pairwise programming as an inspection technique. Okay, so the emphasis that I'm throwing in there is that from a regulatory perspective, Agile is perfectly comfortably accepted. The government is not going to require anything particularly. They just want you to choose something and be able to have evidence that you're following whatever you said you chose. But that's the only thing that they care about, really. Evidentials. All right, test-driven development shows up in several different places, but the idea here is really backwards compared to what people are conventionally used to. Because test-driven development means, if the person needs this certain piece of functionality on a web page, let's go write the test first, which will obviously fail, and then let's write the code And then when the test passes, we know the code's done. In other words, the developer doesn't have any opportunity to embellish. Hey, the test passed, you're done. Go on to the next thing. Don't do any more, all right? Okay, so it's kind of a constraint to propel people forward without getting lost in, like, oh, this would be cute or nice or whatever, or helpful. It's cute, nice, and helpful. It's goal plating. You don't do that. You have an explicit discussion. What do you want, customer? It's helpful or not? Okay. So those are some of the methodologies there. Just from a quick cursory review. At the end of this class, we'll go through the methodologies and step through them much more so. And obviously, we'll be spending a ton of time working through, especially the iterative ones, because there's several of these that are iterative in nature, Scrum being the dominant one. Scrum is used in about 70 to 80% of all software companies at this point in time. Yeah, it might even be a little higher than that these days, but 70% is your guarantee. I'm guessing it's got to be pushing into the 80% range by now. XP is used in about 15% of companies, and that keeps increasing. You're going to see another term that's not on here, but the idea is, how do I take Agile and make, say, 20 different development teams work together in a mutually beneficial fashion? Okay, because the nature of all of these methodologies right here, especially for Scrum, Kanban, TDD, extreme programming, those are all oriented towards a single team. A single development team of, say, 9 people. Okay, so how do you get this thing to scale? So there's another methodology not listed here. If you want to write it down on the side, it's called SAFE, S-A-F. And it's uppercase S, uppercase A, uppercase F. So it's the word SAFE, all in uppercase except for the letter E. E at the end is lowercase. But that's the scaled Agile framework. So there's a guy by the name of Leffingwell that created that approach, and he built it around Scrum, and he built it around Kanban. Just said, you know what? These methodologies are already out there. Why don't I just use them together and formalize it a little bit? I mean, the guy has a really simple money-making idea. Okay? He's like, I'm not going to go invent anything new. I'm just going to take what is out there, and I'm just going to put it together in a little bit of a different form and make a whole company out of it. Okay, so SAFE is very common and up and coming in terms of its ability to integrate in a whole business from portfolio management all the way through development and get everybody on the same Agile page. But it uses a blend of methodologies to do it. All right, so that's the thing I want us to come away with. There is no such thing as an Agile methodology that works. Every individual Agile methodology will fail. Saw that at Motorola after Nokia bought the cellular division of Motorola where I was at. First I was in their two-way radio departments. I was over at Siemens Nuclear Medicine Group. Then I went to Motorola Cellular. Nokia bought the cellular division. And they were into Scrum. And they actually resolved the problem that they focused on with using Agile. But the reality is all they did was relocate the problem. It's like, hey, development's doing great now. Integration now really sucks. It stinks. A lot of quality issues on the integration side when you try to integrate these products. So they were incomplete. And when organizations chase one particular methodology, they're always going to shoot themselves in the foot.
So the methodology, that could be different per project, or is that typically like a company sticks with one and that's just how they?
Company sticks with one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, and when I say sticks with one, it's, you can tolerate variations within teams.
But it doesn't usually change when a new project comes in. It's just how the company runs.
Right. So for Scrum, for anything that's iterative, the whole company's going to run that way. Now you may have, like, say you're a Scrum Master on one team and I use the term Agile lead, it's more generic. And then say Pedro's a lead on another team, Agile lead on another team. You may work on a team that does extreme programming, your team doesn't do extreme programming. There's nothing wrong with that. Because you can contain, some of these methodologies can be contained just strictly within the development team. Scrum, by its nature, is a project management approach. It affects too much of the decision-making and progress assessment to be used just within one team. It's an all or nothing shot.
So I have a question. You said no agile methodology will work. So what works?
By itself.
By itself. So we have to have this integrated approach where you
Right.
choose from whichever one fits that particular situation.
Right.
Okay.
So that's where the dynamics come in, because there's a lot of flexibility to say, well, what's my specific business context? There's some techniques that are more adaptable to that. One not listed here is Dynamic Systems Development Model, DSDM. That's used a lot in Europe for business IT type projects. It's kind of got a spiral model to it, heavily based around prototyping, and it has some really strong principles that are just really good. One of the principles being 80-20 rule. There's like a half a dozen different 80-20 rules. So this particular version of an 80-20 rule is you can get 80% of the customer's desired functionality by expending 20% of your resources. Because the other 20% that the customer wants is going to cost you 5 times more development in order to do that little incremental amount of the extra 20%. Okay. All right, so I use this first paragraph just so we can kind of put a flavor around Agile and what it entails from a big picture perspective. All right, objectives here, ACP, exam, contact hours I mentioned here. So I'm ACP certified and PMP certified. I prefer to have both of them, but that's kind of my personal preference because ACP does not say much about stakeholder management, doesn't say anything about procurement management. There's just good ideas from PMP that people should be aware of. You're going to see a little bit of the PMP lingo, verbiage showing up in the ACP exam. So we cover that when we do some side-by-side comparisons of PMP and ACP. PMP has been around for a really, really long time. ACP is much more recent. The Agile methodology itself got formally defined in 2001. So technically it's only 18 years old, even though its roots go back to 1991-ish. 1992. All right, so course outline, here's a version of the outline. I've given you a hard copy. It's very close to this. Let me just take the hard copy and put it up on the screen for a second. Then we'll take a break here in a moment. Let's see. Pull it off the disk. Okay, so as you go through this, we've got our course notes section. So your hard copy book is divided into 6 sections. We don't do anything with section 6 because it's just like a dump of terms. There's nothing structurally interesting in there. It is a good section to go through and say, you know what, I should be able to talk about every single term that's in section 6. So from your own personal review perspective, it's very useful, but there's no instructional value in it from my perspective.
Like reading an encyclopedia or something.
It's even drier than that. It's more like reading a dictionary without the definitions. Just list the words, organized according to the way that PMI has decided to organize the Agile topics. All right, so the class sessions, for this structure that we're in on Saturdays, sections here means 4-hour blocks. So this is a 4-hour block, which started around 10-ish or so. And this other this number 2 here is about a 4-hour block. Okay, so we've got these 4-hour blocks. We generally do a very slow startup and then accelerate. Okay, so that's the field. We aren't going to get very far in the notes today, but you're going to cover a lot of information. Right, so the intention of that is that you need to be able to study this between now and next Saturday, so that when we come back together, we'll start with an empty whiteboard, and I'll just flip it out to you and say, okay, tell me what Agile is. You know, what are the main artifacts and structures of Agile, and whose responsibility is it to do whatever. So we'll go through all that information, but this interactive review that we have, it gives you the opportunity to express with your own words what you're hearing, because when you're interviewing, it's your words that matter, not my words. You got to be able to speak the lingo, got to be able to speak the language. So there's a lot of verbal interaction here, so please bear that in mind to your benefit in a job interviewing type context, so you get some practice and work out the kinks, so to speak. If there's some if you have some question or doubt about what somebody else says, speak up and ask a question. Because everybody's going to have that same thing on their mind.
So for next Saturday, read this, sections 1, 2, and 3.
So next Saturday, we're going to be working on this space here. We'll be doing the end of, let's see, 2 and 3. Yeah, so I think that's what you said.
No, you said we should read ahead, so since we didn't read ahead, does that mean that, course notes section 1 and 2, there's material, we should read that so we can be ready to discuss next week?
Yeah, so you don't have to ever read ahead to
Okay.
discuss. I mean, it's your option if you want to read ahead. The class, the dynamics is all built on reviewing what we covered. Not expecting you to read ahead
Okay.
and then asking questions about what you've read before the class. We only cover material orally that's already been presented, thrown on the whiteboard, and then spoken of and beat up a little bit with questions and answers.
So how many weeks is the class?
We've got 3 Saturdays, this
Three
Saturday
Saturdays.
and the next 2 Saturdays. So it goes a pretty good clip. Okay. All right, so if you think about it, we're covering 5 sections in your book in 3 Saturdays. Okay.
So just 1 and 2 next week, or just 1?
We will definitely be doing number 2 and 3. So if you want to read ahead a little bit in your course notes section, next Saturday we'll be done or significantly into section 3.
This is the green book or the binder?
Binder book. All right, so there is another book I've got, or sorry, another email I've got, and you'll see it that gives you a mapping of the green book to the course notes.
Oh,
So when I
where's
send
that?
you out the email later today after I collect everybody's email,
Oh, okay.
then you'll see what that mapping
Oh,
is.
that's awesome.
Okay, because,
Andrew,
yeah, go ahead.
can you arrange so that I can pick up these books at the Schaumburg location sometime next week? I won't be able to be there until 5:30.
Yeah, that's fine.
I thank you.
Okay, all right, so as part of this introduction email, let me just go back to a resource that's available to you here. Because I want to, and this will be a little teaser, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it is more of a teaser because you don't have the Google Drive folder link yet. So I mentioned earlier, there's this Agile for Students folder. Okay. So all the handouts that I'm going to give you are in this top folder. Okay. So this is available to look at. The class from MITS is oriented as a Scrum Master. Okay. So Scrum and ACP. So details on, okay, so if I want to be an Agile lead, if I want to get the certification for that, then go ahead into your Scrum Master and Product Owner certification. And Allison, I think, mentioned that she was thinking about going into product management. Is that right?
No, project management.
Project management?
I mean, I've been managing projects, but formally going into that department maybe.
Okay. So, yeah, I thought you'd said product, but you said project, okay.
Yeah.
So my hair,
Yeah.
has a business analysis background, I mean,
Right.
you would fit well as a business analyst. I mean, taking a business analyst skill and going into product management is a natural step.
So what is product
Good,
management?
because the product management is being responsible for the roadmap that states, here's what this product features are gonna be at the end of the year,
Oh,
at the end of the next quarter, at the end of the following quarter. So product management is keeping your eye on the ball for what the customer needs and making sure that you've thought that out enough. So with other people, of course, not doing it solo. But you've thought that out enough that there is a pipeline of work for the development team to do. So the product manager really sets up that pipeline of work.
Works with the business users, what they need, and
Exactly.
outline that with the developers.
Right. Mhm. Okay, so that's now, and I'm saying product management more specifically right now, because the business analyst these days is now called the product owner in Agile. Because they basically took the traditional role of the product owner, or product manager, I should say, that person never really worked directly with requirements. They said, you know what? In Agile, we like to make things nice and simple for communication, and we don't like having so many specialized roles. So guess what? The product manager is now going to do what the business analyst did, plus what the product manager did. So you combine product manager and business analyst together into one role called the product owner. So it's all of this consolidation, role consolidation. Okay, so this is what causes upheaval in the industries. Is a lot of this role
And the
consolidation.
Scrum Master are different.
Yes. Mhm. Okay, so looking through here, this, I'm spending a little bit of time on this because it'll like incentivize you to look at this before next Saturday. You should spend some time going through this thoroughly. So we'll have 3 Saturdays together. Like, okay, one's done at the end of today, and you got 2 left.
Yeah.
All right. So the README is important. It shows how to get certified. So, and I'm bringing you into this so I can focus on this document right here. PSM is Professional Scrum Master. So Scrum Master just means Agile lead. So for those that don't have like 1,500 hours of Agile experience, and you really want to, like even Stephanie, if you wanted to say, hey, I've done a lot of inspection work and I know how to map my experience into software, I would recommend go get a Professional Scrum Master certification. You will know enough out of this class to go out and do that. Assuming that you study according to what's mentioned in here as well. Okay, so there's resources necessary for you to pass the PSM, and they actually have 3 levels of the Professional Scrum Master certification. For other people, like maybe Maher, you wanted to go into a professional product owner certification, there's certification for that as well.
Okay.
so I have a question. So
Yes.
the Scrum Master certification, you're saying, like prepares you for this product manager role of setting up the pipeline of work that you described?
So the Scrum Master role / Agile lead is for leading the development team. Okay, the product owner is the one that sets up that pipeline of work that feeds into the development teams.
So is the Scrum Master, Professional Scrum Master certification, can you do that as well as the ACI, this one?
ACP?
ACP, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, and is it, I don't want to use the term easier, but I mean, is it less intense or,
Oh, yeah.
okay, all right.
It's a lot less intense.
That's a test than PMI.
If you figure it out, like intensity
Less intense than
scale.
this one, the ACP.
Right.
I know it's less intense than that thing we
Right.
went through over there, and I'm still trying to wrap my arms around all that.
So this is the least intense. there's 90 questions that you have to answer in 60 minutes.
And that's it.
Right. So that's not too bad. Yeah. The ACP is 120 questions that you answer in 3 hours. Okay, the PMP is 200 questions that you answer in 4 hours. Yeah, so the quantity of material increases significantly in each of those steps.
You said the ACP was 2 hours, 120?
It's 120 questions in 3 hours.
3 hours.
So 60 minutes per, 60 minutes, 60 questions per hour,
Pretty much, yeah.
I guess.
And I might be off by 10 or 20 years, so. But it's a 3-hour exam. So, little hint for the exam, just because I might forget. If you're like me and you have these progressive lenses, bad idea to wear those at the exam. I wore these with my ACP exam. Fortunately, it wasn't the PMP one. And these progressive lenses, I mean, I'm just assuming that I'm going to go in and be able to have a window that I can control the size of it. You go in and you get a screen that's pretty much the same as what you're seeing in front of your eyes right now in this room, more conventional, larger screens. These progressive lenses do not work well for reading left to right across the window that's that wide. I never use windows that wide. ever on my computer at home.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to, for the PMP exam, I brought my computer glasses with me. Because that's not progressive, it's just set for one distance. I can see the whole screen at the same time. You don't have computer glasses, it's worth your $80 or whatever it is to go get them. But, tell the optometrist I need something, glasses, all the same prescription, where I can just see like 21 inches in front of my eyes. Whatever the distance is that your face usually is, your eyes are away from your screen. It's about 21 inches. That's fairly typical. So just a little note there, okay? You don't get thrown by that.
I had that problem with one of my ASQ exams, got it, and just like within half an hour, I had a huge migraine. Most I think it was because of last minute cramming and studying, instead of doing it ahead of time, staying up all day, night for 3 days beforehand.
That might contribute to it.
Half hour into a 5-hour exam, I was so sick. Fortunately, I passed. I took that exam in an hour and a half. I seriously just went through click, and just best guess. Question 5 seconds, and looked, and then went out and laid it in the back of my car.
For the rest of the test, right?
Great job. Yeah, for the rest of the day.
I thought I was gonna get sick in the testing room.
For me, it was just a major concentration strain. I can't see the left side of the screen, I'm looking at the right side of the screen. So I gotta memorize what the left side of the sentences are, because I scan to the right side.
I didn't know it was such a beast in classes, where you get different views. Alrighty.
Okay, so as you walk through this, classroom resources, there is some video clips from the previous class and some whiteboard images. And if you want to take an early look, like you have time tomorrow, because I'm not more than likely going to be able to get an email out tomorrow. But if you want the mapping of the green book into the sections,
Nice.
it's going to be in here. It says mapping of course materials to McGriffith's book. So go down to that link, and this takes you through what that mapping is. First and second class, third and fourth. Remember, this is Saturdays, so don't. So the first and second are today. The third and fourth are next Saturday. And this is just worked out from a 4-hour. Sometimes we do 4-hour increments, sometimes 6 hours, sometimes 8 hours. Just depends on what schedules people are able to accommodate. And guess what? All we do is chapter 5. Okay.
What?
Chapter 5 is what we're covering today. Okay.
Good place to start.
Right. And it's not even all of chapter 5, because Go down a little bit, it says we're gonna finish chapter 5 next side. So chapter 5 also happens to be the longest chapter in the regardless book. And I take the organization of the class according to what's the structure of Agile. So I get the mechanics, the definition of it done first, and then loop back and catch the techniques and the soft skills. Okay, so Griffiths, in the way that he laid out the book, all he did was follow PMI's format, and PMI's format pushes it out quite a ways towards the end. So he didn't do necessarily anything wrong. It's just, to me, it's not instructionally useful to save the main difficult material for like 2/3 of the way through the class. So that the harder stuff is what we're doing first.
I think this is really awesome that you linked it to the book so that the book is really useful to us, like if you want to go through the book between classes. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It does make a big difference.
Yeah.
I also teach for one other place, and they take it through in a different sequence, but the book here is good. All right, so with that said, we've gone through the primary functions that are in here. Just little things here. Agile review, if I look back to the course outline, whatever time we have at the end of our last Saturday, we can cover for review. There are some questions that I've created, and then in a separate document provided the answers. Usually it's really hard to make time to fit that in. Those questions and subsequent answers, you'll see right down here. It's again in your Agile for Students folder. This is going to be a good sample of what the harder questions are going to look like on your exam. Okay, so typical questions are like this, or multiple choice. The tricky part is which of the two good answers is the best answer. Okay, because every multiple choice exam that's created has, it's easy to throw away two answers. Then the remaining two, it's like, it kind of makes sense. Which one's better? Okay. All right. So after break, we're going to get into what's called the 12 principles, 12 Agile software principles. That's your decoder ring that you have to get familiar with in order to pick the best answer. All right. So there's a way to do that, and it works very effectively. I've given that advice to students. And they come back to me saying, hey, that worked really well for me. So I know that it works. People come back and said it works. I used it myself. So, all right, study groups. If you want to be able to put together a study group, you do that on your own. People will have each other's email available. There's a folder here. You can go put in meeting times and coordinate. Whoever wants to do logistics for it, there's a folder you can do that in. Some classes do study groups, some don't. There is an online ACP practice exam right here. This is how to access it. If you do have the occasion where you log in and your login fails to work, then you just send an email saying, hey, I think your subscription expired. So we don't track really closely when the subscriptions expire. People will usually speak up really quickly. Okay. Course outline, that's at the bottom here. Right, so the last thing in the course outline at the bottom here is that if you do want to get together after the third class, and you've got your ACP exam scheduled, then we can say, okay, yeah, let's get together for 3 hours in an evening or 4 hours or whatever. Saturdays might be a little tough to fit, with an impromptu class like this. So usually it's done on a weeknight. It can be done remotely as well, but we're available. MITS makes us available so that we can do a quick review, quick meeting. like 3 or 4 hours before you take the exam.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's like a one-on-one thing and,
Well, we group everybody together,
Oh, you
say, here's gonna be the review. So it's not one-on-one,
okay,
because, everybody's gonna have the same questions. But the idea here is to be able to discuss topics from incorrectly answered questions. As a way to prepare for an exam is not to go study all the material and read through it carefully and all this stuff and then take the quiz. Like after you go through this class, then take the quiz at the end of the Griffith book. For the answers you get wrong, go study them. So it cuts down on the amount of reading tremendously. Okay, you get so much understanding out of this just from the interaction that we all have, that you're qualified enough to go in and take the quiz at the end of every chapter, according to the schedule you'd seen earlier.
so how does this work? I'm confused. So like if everybody's taking the test on the same day or in the same time period, then you schedule this session at the end?
When somebody says, hey, I've got my exam
Right.
scheduled, certification exam, I'm gonna sit for the exam, we got that scheduled. About 3 weeks before that, just say, hey, I've got it scheduled, here's what it's gonna be, can you hold a review?
Oh,
And then we'll just send out to everybody to say, hey, there's gonna be a review on this date.
I see.
So the people that have the exam scheduled, those would be the ones that drive when this post-review, so to speak, this review before the exam actually happens. So that's available. Some classes like to do it, some don't. It's up to you.
How long does it typically take a person to be at the ready stage, people?
When
Ready to take the test?
yeah, so for me, it was 2 weeks, but I think y'all should be able to do it in less than that because I did a really in-depth study and a lot of my handouts already answer a lot of questions that I had to go dig out. So you've got as much information available as possible. It should take you, when I say like a week, it took me 2 weeks, that was about 8 hours a day. Okay, so you should be able to do it in about a week, say if you've got 8 hours a day, 2 weeks if you have 4 hours a day, something like that.
So is this like PMP where you have to put in the application before then get approved to take the test and stuff like that?
Yes.
So we should be working on the application now.
Yes. So, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I skipped over that part. Right, so let me finish off how to study here.
Okay.
Okay.
I had one question about studying the quizzes and the tests. I found it beneficial with some tests, I want to know if it would apply to this one, is when I have a question and, all right, this is the correct answer, but the other 3 things, I look at them and make sure that I understand why those aren't the right answers
Exactly.
and that I know what those things are. And sometimes it's not beneficial if it's somebody who will just throw all kinds of weird things in their answers, you don't want to go out researching that. But if they don't do that, then I want to research every one of those answers and make sure I know what that term is.
Yeah.
Because it might turn up on another question or something else.
Right, that's a really good strategy that Stephanie mentioned. It's like you want to, it's equally important to understand why a particular answer is not the answer as it is to understand why the best answer is the best answer. And the inverse is true.
Okay,
So you don't get thrown
you should
off.
look at all those things, and if one of the answers was something you've never even seen before, you should go out and look and see what that is.
Right.
Because it probably means something.
Right, so this other handout I'm gonna give you all, I've got a hard copy of it. This is the Scrum Guide by Sutherland and Schwaber. Okay, so they in about 1996-ish, 97, right around there, they wrote the Scrum Guide. They presented a paper, which is the origins of the Scrum Guide. So that paper was presented at a software conference, a popular one at one time, which still is popular. This Scrum Guide is only about 19 pages long. If you go through it, read through it, and then go through it a second time and study it, go through it a third time and make sure you know everything that's in there.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
Wake up, Lark.
Right.
Yeah.
That Scrum Guide covers about 20% of the exam.
Mm.
So that it's consolidated into about 19 pages. So there's a lot of high value in terms of the minimal amount of material that we go through that. So key item here, this other item in here. And these are documents these are the names of handouts that I have, and we'll go over this one later. But you do need to have an understanding of what the 12 XP practices are. It's a little bit complicated because there's 12 of them. And you'll see the complexity when they get to it. There's only going to be like 0, 1, 2, or maybe at most 3 questions on XP. So it's important to not overstudy. Some material you just need to become aware of. Other material you have to really know. And I'll point out those differences as we go. This is your online test to take. Just mentions the document in the Google Drive folder I mentioned earlier. There is a document that I give you here that is not a handout. I don't give you a hard copy. It's a kind of long document. Some people use it, some don't. You can cut it out if you want to. This is my own personal notes that it's kind of like a miniature encyclopedia that I put together when I did my study. This is what I mean by it. There's a lot of stuff that I've already done, making it available to you.
Awesome.
So that should help you out tremendously. Last item in here is, I also have mentioned the steps for getting the certification. Those steps are, let's see, let me get to the right spot here. The steps we'll put on the whiteboard eventually. I won't do that now. But basically, you have to apply for the certification. And ACP has to agree with what you claimed about your Agile experience. If they disagree, they'll just simply ask for clarification. And then there's payment for the exam. And after payment is when you get an exam ID. That ID is good for 1 year. You use that to schedule the exam at your convenience at one of the proctored Prometric test sites around the Chicagoland area. Same as PMP.
Oh, the exam payment and then it's good for 1 year?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay, and then to help you fill in your Agile work experience for those that do have it, and I want to encourage you, even if you're not in a software field, think about what you've done from an Agile perspective. That's one of the huge benefits of going through this class, is you think Agile. And there's like one gal, she was doing nonprofit work through this, it wasn't the UN, but some other similar body of organization in Africa. So their projects were all Agile in their nature. Nothing to do with software whatsoever.
That's the way mine would be.
Okay,
Right.
there you go, with developing training material.
With training materials, yes.
Mhm. So the idea there is to extract out of Agile, okay, here's the principles, here's how I can, wordsmith my expression of job experience so that it matches the Agile criteria. Because Agile is an approach, it's a methodology, it's independent of underlying products, services, whatever. Okay. For me, when I did my Agile certification, I had to be extremely creative. I'm in performance engineering, doing Agile, those two both come together really well to begin with. And I just threw together something that works, with the understanding, hey, the customer doesn't give us requirements, obviously we're doing Agile. So I came up with a description that's like, okay. It got rejected actually the first time, so I had to recraft it. But at the bottom file here, it says Agile Work Experience ACP application. Okay. So again, here is a way to think through, it's guidelines on how to think through what to put in your Agile work experience. There's a few items in here, like Pedro mentioned using QA, Rutin mentioned he does QA as well. So there's some items here that would be useful for you to look at. Because there's examples of what's rejected and there's examples that are accepted.
Awesome.
Do they ask for some kind of proof of this, or is it just based on what you put on an application? I mean, do you have to give them something besides what you're just writing down?
You have to give a name and, I don't remember if it's email, but the name and phone number of somebody who will vouch for you.
Okay.
You know, for every project that you're going to indicate, because it doesn't have to be 1,500 hours on one project. You can have 1,500 Agile experience hours spread across 2 or 3 or 4 projects, whatever. Those would be pretty small projects, but that name and contact is not going to be utilized unless you're the randomly selected person that they audit, in which case there's a very rigorous audit process where you have to send a particular piece of information to the person, and they are going to send you back a sealed letter that you put in a packet that you send off to PMI. So here's my, for some, not many people, it was a warning, my piece of advice proactively. Whoever your contact is going to be, sit down with them before you submit your application, and make sure they agree with whatever you're claiming your Agile experience is and your general project experience, because you have to claim 2,000 hours of general project experience, which is basically 1 year, and you have to claim 1,500 hours of Agile experience. So usually those are going to be 2 different people. They may not always be that way, but just make sure that that person agrees with what you said, because it's a little hard to have that discussion if you're being audited and the person disagrees. Okay, that will not go well. All right, so there's all of the mechanics of just doing the ACP and having an introduction that's high level into this. So that takes us to the end of the course outline here. You've got a rich amount of information to work with. We're going to take a break now. And hey, guess what? We're going to be able to start with slide 4. Part of what we mentioned already. Okay. So let's take a break for like 10-ish minutes or so. There's coffee, the machine out there for anybody that wants to make up a brew. Go ahead and do that. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I will not trust you to make it anyways. We'll take a break here for 10 minutes, and for those that are remote, I'll send you out a new link.
Thank you.